Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today I want to do a video about how OCD can slip into the most random of subjects. Nothing is really off limits, so I think it's good to be aware of where it can slip in so you can catch yourself before you start performing compulsions, whether that's physical or mental, ruminations, etc. But firstly, I'd just like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below if you want to be kept up to date as all of the videos are released. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to talk about some of the ways that my OCD has kind of surprised me by picking subjects that aren't necessarily on the list of kind of key themes. So obviously the big themes that we might be aware of are harm, themes surrounding your sexuality, themes surrounding your gender, relationship OCD, particularly about romantic relationships, obviously contamination, and then themes about contracting HIV or paedophilia, or various other sort of the taboo themes. So one of the things that mine has done, which has taken me by surprise, but I'm quite conscious of it now, is so relationship OCD was a huge theme for me, but it wasn't just about my romantic partner. It started to slip into my other relationships, and I didn't necessarily realize at first that that's what was happening, because I was so kind of still focused on it, not going after my romantic relationship. So it actually, for me, I found it me having sort of confusion and doubts over some like my relationship with my mum towards the end of her life before she passed away. Now, me and my mum were kind of best mates. We were super, super close, and losing her broke my heart, as it did my dad and my brother and my mum's friends and our wider family. It's 9 years ago now since she passed away, but I still have dreams that we're like arguing and stuff, which is not something that happened very often, obviously, when I was a teenager and things. And from time to time we'd have disagreements, as any family would. You can't, just because somebody's passed away, you don't want to be, putting them up on this diamond pedestal. She had her things and I had mine, but these dreams, they would trigger me, and they still can leave my wake up with sort of a bad feeling, but they would trigger me and make me feel confused, and like, did I sort of feel quite negative towards my mum when she was passing away and things like that? And that's OCD, that's relationship OCD about somebody who's passed away, and I can't check with her or anything like that. There's no way of getting certainty there. So that's one way that it's kind of slipped in there, and notably as standard about something that's incredibly close to my heart. That's quite painful to think about, but sort of practicing not ruminating about that, just sort of also for me, it was kind of like, yeah, obviously, I loved my mum. I was sad when she passed away. Even if there were disagreements, God, it doesn't mean that you weren't sad when somebody passed away or that you didn't adore them. So, completely irrational anyway to be worrying about that. It's no good to anyone. But of course, it was painful, and that was an interesting way that it slipped in. In relation to my mum, also the occasional nasty thought about her as well, and it feeling worse because she's not here. So that was something I ended up doing some exposures to kind of work on, because that was something I found quite distressing. I also found it sort of going after my sort of family, in terms of my brother used to live abroad, and then I'd have doubts, am I excited enough to see him? I need to be excited to see him, and it's bad, do I not care, why don't I care, etc. So it's kind of that feeling of numbness creeping in, I suppose, and a bit of relationship OCD there, because it's then you're like examining that relationship, and you're not feeling the right way there, and oh, you must feel a certain way about this event, because what if something bad happens then, and then you didn't make the most of it, and all of this irrational stuff, why must you? And you know, it's kind of, yeah, if something did happen, then it's like, well, it's, you know, scientific thinking in a sense that one hasn't got anything to do with the other. Another way, it's okay, so there's a big theme here for me. It's sort of my relationships with people, the people I care about. So that fear is, you know, that feeling of kind of connection with people. That's obviously a core, you know, core fear for me that I've had to work on, and losing people that I care about in various ways, you know, being alone. And so that's something that I've worked on, doing exposures for, practicing, you know, doing more things on my own. And so key sort of overall sort of fear driving a lot of those thoughts, but those are the way that it's kind of manifested for me. You know, I've had obsessions about various friends, about, you know, do I even want to be friends with them anymore? And, you know, even though they're close friends still, and it might just be one thing that they've done that's sort of set me off, and then I felt the need to ruminate over it, because I know I do still want to be friends with that person. Then I'd feel these negative feelings, and again, relationship, OCD, isn't it? But it's about a friendship. I've had it about my dog. I wanted a dog for years, and got one last year. He's the apple of my eye, but I'll suddenly have a thought about, like, I've been somebody who's quite fancied having, you know, 2 dogs maybe, and then I've had thoughts like, well, I can't get another dog, so I might love it more than Banjo, who's my first dog. And then I've had thoughts that Banjo's not because he's a puppy, he likes to play, he's not as cuddly as I'd like him to be. Maybe I don't love him enough, and, you know, thoughts like that. And again, it's sort of, you know, that's chasing happiness, that's chasing that feeling. It's, you know, that sort of, you know, what is it so awful if you didn't love your dog as much as you thought that you would, and, you know, things like that. And it's sort of examining those sort of fears, and, you know, it's a fear of not being happy, I think, there as well. And in relation to that, something that's really helped me with my mental health is gardening, spending that time outside, that feeling of achievement when my seeds germinate. People who don't garden are probably like now switching this video off, but bear with me. So it's a big, you know, there's many different aspects to it that are good for mental health, and I'm not saying everyone needs to do it, I'm just saying it's been good for me. Being outside, you know, in a natural environment with the elements, feeling it on my skin, so it's a mindful aspect. The feeling of achievement when you're growing a vegetable from seed or a flower from seed keeps me busy. I'm kind of in the flow, and I'm not necessarily focusing on what's going on in my mind while I'm doing it. So it's really helped me, and it brings me a lot of joy and optimism as well. Because they do say, there's a saying, to grow a garden is to believe in tomorrow, and there is that element of it. You know, especially if like for me, at certain times I was suffering from, you know, still relationship OCD when I was working on my garden, and, you know, what if I'm doing all this, you know, even when we move out or something, but still continued with my garden. And it's, you know, believing, no, I can get, you know, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do it. And it's been a huge healer for me, and something I'm really passionate about. And I've actually found that it's something I think about when I'm falling asleep at night, and it's quite a soothing thing to think about, even though I am doing maybe a little bit of planning and stuff. But it's certainly more pleasant to ruminate over that than, you know, the state of the world or various other things, or whatever your or OCD theme might be or something. But of course, then sometimes if I'm not in the mood to get out there, you know, maybe I'm feeling a bit tired that day physically because it's quite physical work, or if it's crap weather, then it's like, oh my God, do I not like gardening anymore? Oh my God, but what if I suddenly don't like gardening anymore? Or what if something happened to me, then I couldn't garden anymore? And sort of things like that. And sort of, I'm kind of, I know enough now to know not to ruminate over this, because I know that that's a fear of fear. That's because I know that it's been something that has aided me in my recovery, just feeling more content in myself. Just it's contentment really when I'm outside in the garden. It's good physically and mentally, and that's me being, because I know I get joy and excitement from it. That's the fear of, if I lose that, then am I going to go backwards to where I was, and go through those low feelings, and will I not have this outlet, and will I then have to start ruminating and all the time, and will my OCD get bad? So it's fear of fear, and fear of kind of going backwards with my mental health that's fueling that then. So that you get to a point when you start to recognize these things. So those were just a few examples of the things that I've experienced that are kind of more random and a bit weird. Though a mate that I chatted to, who suffers from OCD, a couple of years ago, said that sometimes he'd feel bad when cheering for his football team. Maybe he shouldn't, he doesn't get to cheer. I can't remember what he'd said now, but again, this is another thing. If football is something that brings you joy, you might think, so if anyone American soccer, I'm referring to, you might be afraid of losing that interest, or not being able to watch football anymore, because it's your moment where you get a bit of peace, and maybe you're afraid of not having that peace. So again, it comes back to the fear of fear. So then it's tackling it from that level. It's taking it down to, what does this actually mean? So it's manifesting in this way, but what does that mean though? If we take it down, how does that relate to other things? You start to see these patterns. So for me, it's kind of that loss of fear of not having connection, and never being happy, and sort of fear of fear. And I think a lot of people would maybe have similar ways that were similar fears that might be fueling certain themes. So those were just some examples for me of how I've experienced OCD kind of seeping into more random things that I wasn't expecting, where it might have taken me off guard, or actually I might have been a bit more wiser to it at the time, and how I kind of approach it, I suppose, because this still, it still can happen, and it's just important to be aware of the fact that it can happen, and just sometimes you can if you just step back and just look at what it, what does it mean to you, that subject? What does that mean to you? What do you get out of that thing that you might be afraid of losing, or that you're afraid might happen to you? What does that mean? And then you can go back to that sort of, it's the core sort of fears that you might have that you think are really awful, that you're afraid of, and then you can start sort of again tackling that, examining the irrational beliefs that would be fueling it, and maybe potentially doing exposures, which you would hope, you'd need to discuss with your therapist or OCD coach. I hope this video has been helpful to you or useful to you. It'd be interesting to hear about what other people's random kind of things that it's kind of latched onto, that may have taken them by surprise. But thank you very much for watching, and take care. Bye.